Welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we are going to talk about the O'Lantern family pumpkins. These have a special importance to me because they are one of the toys that paved the way for me to become a collector. Without these pumpkins, I might not have become a toy collector. Probably, they were not solely responsible for me becoming a collector, but they were one of the handful of things that transitioned me from a sane person into a toy collector. The O'Lantern family pumpkins were released in the fall of 1987. And I remember the moment I first saw these things. But let's show you what we're talking about. These are bizarre creatures. That is Jock O'Lantern, because he's a jock, he's an athlete. And I can just imagine his voice. Just, I don't want to be prejudiced against athletes, so I won't imitate his voice, but you can look at his face and imagine vividly what he probably sounds like. If you ask him, how did the game go, he's going to talk about how he gave 110%. And, just have to make those scores, gotta score. I don't know anything about sports. I know as much about sports as I do astrophysics. I probably know more about astrophysics than I do about sports. But you can imagine what this character sounds like. Just talk to him about how did the football game go? Why did he win or lose? And you can hear the voice that's going to come out of his mouth. He's Jock O'Lantern. So look at that weird thing. Here's his back. So you see, it's a realistic looking pumpkin. It's a jack-o'-lantern, but it has a human face instead of a carved face, like you would expect, a jack-o'-lantern to look like. Instead of a traditional jack-o'-lantern, Jock O'Lantern has a human-style face. And the idea is that these pumpkins have come to life. They've been in the pumpkin patch too long. They've been neglected. They haven't been harvested. And year after year, they remained in the pumpkin patch until they became sentient. They came to life and became self-aware and grew these faces. This is the second time I'm recording this episode. I tried in early October to record an episode about the O'Lantern family, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. I looked at the footage after I recorded it, and I said, I can't put this out. It was a mess. And one of the problems was that I did not have Jock. I thought I had him. I was going through all the pumpkins on camera, and then when it came time to present Jock, I said, where's Jock? I didn't have Jock. I had him at one time. I used to give these away as gifts, not like to family or anything, just if someone had an interest in them. I used to have just big bags, like trash bags, plastic trash bags, full of them. And I enjoyed spreading the love and spreading to increasing the cult of the O'Lantern family pumpkins in doing my part to wrangle new members into the cult. So I would sometimes give people pumpkins to try to get them, they already had an interest in it or would not have given it to them. But I just liked giving them out. So, I must have given away my Jock O'Lantern. I must have only had one, because most of them I had 2 or 3 each, but I guess not. I didn't have 2 or 3 Jocks. So I was recording the episode and discovered I had no jock. And that was only one of the things that went wrong in that episode. It was like the last straw, though. It was like, okay, that's it. I mean, after everything else that's happened, now on top of all that, I don't have a complete set to show. Cut, stop. I'm not going to put this out. I'm going to redo it. So I regrouped, got a jock, and also there was some information missing. There were points in the episode where I kind of stammered, like, what I wasn't sure what the facts were. I was missing some numbers and some data. So what I did was I contacted one of the super collectors of O-Lantern family pumpkins. His name is Paul Budman. And he is a super collector of O-Lantern family pumpkins. He's got everything. He's got a complete set of all the different kinds of pumpkins. He's got the most rare items in the series, which we'll get to. He's got multiples of everything. There's very, very few O-Lantern family items that he doesn't have. So he's the expert. He's the expert on O-Lantern family pumpkins, besides the guy who made them, which we'll talk about in a minute. As far as collectors are concerned, Paul is the expert on O-Lantern family pumpkins. So I consulted him, got some information, so I was prepared then to come back and do this properly. So here we are. That's also why this episode is coming at you so late. I don't know when you'll see it. It might be Halloween Day that I upload this. We're really cutting it close, trying to get this in before Halloween. It was supposed to be online weeks ago. Hopefully you'll say better late than never. We're here now. So, what are these pumpkins? Why do they exist? These are the brainchild of Todd Masters. Todd Masters is a Hollywood special effects makeup artist. He came up in the 1980s. That's when he first made his name. He worked on films like Poltergeist, Predator, Big Trouble in Little China. And because of these pumpkins, I can kind of tell his work. Like in those movies and other films he's done, I can kind of see, oh, he did that. You know, he sculpted that creature, because like they kind of have his sculpting style. When you collect these, you kind of clue into his sculpting style, and they have you can see his hand in the sculpt. So not just in these pumpkins, but I mean a monster or something, some effect in a movie, you can see that looks like something Todd sculpted. So he was at the beginning of his career when he did this. He was not a veteran makeup artist. He was very young. I don't know exactly how old he was, but he was a very young man when he started this company to make these pumpkins. So he was an up-and-comer in the industry, young man, going places, had worked on some big projects, and he must have just, I guess, had an entrepreneurial spirit that he wanted to start his own company. And if you Google him, there are articles about Todd Masters. At the time these pumpkins came out, he had some major press. He had some major news media interviews that go all into the history of who he was and why he did this and everything. So instead of me trying, in a Mickey Mouse way to try to repeat all that, it's better for you to just Google Todd Masters, O-Lantern Family Pumpkins, and you'll find these articles and you can read all about his history and the history of the company. But he started his own company called Pumpkin Productions, Inc. He started the company in 1987. And he started the company in order to produce specifically these pumpkins. These were out for the Halloween season of 1987. They were out for 2 years, fall of 87, fall of 88, and then the company went out of business in 1989. So as far as I know, they didn't put out more pumpkins for 1989. I could be wrong about that. There might have been pumpkins on shelves, but they would have been stock from the previous year. Now I say that because I remember them being out longer than that. And yeah, I'm not sure. See, I don't want to say anything inaccurate, but I think what I saw was stock from 87, 88 that was still, it was unsold stock that was still circulating in a few years past that. But officially, the official history is the company operated in 87, 88, went out of business in 89. So these pumpkins, you would think that he would just make this round, kind of like a Halloween pumpkin shape and put a weird face on it. But he molded these. I think the original ones were molded off of actual pumpkins, and it does look like that. I mean, it looks like a natural looking real pumpkin. I think maybe later on, after the first few, he might have started sculpting the pumpkins from scratch. But from what I've seen, because he's posted online photographs of his process, at least the first ones were sculpted on actual pumpkins. The faces were like, the clay sculpt of the faces were attached to an actual pumpkin. They're foam, in case you can't tell. I mean, I'm not going to squeeze it too much, but it's like a Nerf kind of a foam. And the only paint on these, some of them have like kind of like a rubbed paint, like a reddish paint rubbed into the foam, into the orange foam, and others don't. And they all have a green painted stem. That's the only real paint on them, except for the ones that have this general sort of a red paint. Like I say, it's like I don't know what the term is when you rub the paint onto the surface. It's not spray, it's not dry brush, it's like a rubbing process. And there's a word for that that like mask makers know, but I don't know the right term. So I saw these in a Hallmark store in 1987. I was in a mall. The building's still there, but the mall doesn't exist anymore, even though I heard a politician on TV just a few days ago refer to this mall. Anyway, the mall is called Mark Twain Shopping Mall. That was the name. That entity doesn't exist anymore. There's no longer a Mark Twain shopping mall. The building's still there, and I'm not sure what's in it, but it's not a mall anymore. But that mall was important in my childhood. That was the closest mall to where I lived. Closest mall. It was in my city. Closest mall to my home. It was a short drive away. And it was this long, it was an indoor mall. And it was like a long strip and some very fancy interior stuff. I think it might have had, there might have been a fountain or something inside. There was some fancy stuff inside. I remember it being brown, kind of like this wood paneling, just everything was brown, 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 brown. And so you had like a strip down the middle and then stores along the side. It was just like one long strip. It didn't have different wings. It was just one long strip. And, I think there was a Skaggs. There was a Knights, 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 stores that don't exist anymore. And there was a Hallmark store. It was on the right. If you were walking, when I saw these, the store was on my right. So I'm walking down the hall, and the Hallmark's got this open face storefront, and they got their display of Halloween stuff, and they got a table, and it's got all these pumpkins on it. And I just kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye. I went, "What's that?" And I would have been a teenager at this point, and I'd never seen anything like this. This was crazy. And I was not collecting at that time. But something about these just arrested my attention. I had to go investigate them. And I remember just standing there holding them, thinking, what are these? I mean, how do they even exist? What in the heck am I holding in my hand? They were so strange, so bizarre. And they weren't cheap. I think they were around $20 each back then in the 1980s. And I don't know what possessed me, but I bought one, and I'll show you the one I bought. And then I came back later, another day, and I bought another. And then I bought another. So I ended up with 3 of these Old Lantern Family pumpkins. And I don't think I used them as Halloween decorations. I think I just put them in my bedroom, just on a shelf. I just liked the look of them. And they sat there for years. And they had tags, which I took off, but I saved. But that kind of, just the fact that I was no longer a child, and yet I was buying something childish, and I wasn't playing with it, I wasn't using it in any way. That was sort of the first thing that I collected, the first non-essential sort of plaything, kind of an item that I bought for no reason other than simply to own it and to look at it. And after that, I bought some Boglins, and I saved the boxes for the Boglins. I bought all the Boglins, all the big ones. And it was like a chain reaction. I bought a couple of Kenner RoboCop toys, and the 1989 Batman came out, and I bought some of that, and I bought some DePaul Doctor Who toys, and it just, one thing led to another, and it was like a snowball that got bigger and bigger, and then by like Halloween of 1989, I was buying carded Lincoln Monsters and boxed Mego superheroes and boxed Captain Action, you name it. So that was when just the dam just burst, fall of 1989. But it started in 87 with these pumpkins, and it just started building and building. And this was the gateway. These were the gateway drug. And then over the next 2 years, this illness, this virus inside of me grew and grew and grew and grew until finally it just took over, and I became a toy collector. And I still am to this day. So the pumpkins have a special place in my memory. Let's put him back over here. The first time I did this episode, I kept all the pumpkins out here, but I don't think I'm going to do it this time. Well, maybe I'll bring them all out later to have them all on display. Let's talk about the ones that I had as a kid, if I can find them. Well, I say as a kid, I mean a teenager. Is this one of them? Well, this is the main guy. This is Jack O'Lantern. His name's Jack. And he's an O-Lantern. Jack O'Lantern. He does not want to stand up. Now look at that grotesque face. That is... Imagine seeing that in 1987. Look at that crazy thing. There had never been anything like this before. This was a new thing. To see this sitting in a Hallmark store. What a grotesque grotesque, crazy creature. He is bizarre. Now, I don't think, though, he's the one from when I was a teenager. Let's see if I can find him. Is this the one? Oh, no, that's not him yet. This must be the one from when I was a teenager. This one is another Jack, but he's got damage. So he's not the one from when I was a kid. Here's two Jacks. And you can see what I was talking about, how this is more like just raw orange foam. This one has a red paint on this, not heavy sprayed. They just kind of rub it on there to give it a reddishness. Whereas this one is just as is, just orange foam. I don't know. I remember them being both ways the same year. I don't think it was like one's 87, one's 88. I think from day one they were putting them out the same way. I mean, they were putting them out both ways. I like the reddish ones. I like the ones that have the reddish color. That's Jack O'Lantern. So I guess this one must be the one from my youth. Let's show you the tags. Okay, so this is what their tag look like. And it opens up. And it shows you the whole O'Lantern family, at least the adults. And you see them all together here. So there's the whole family. And that's what it looks like back there. And interestingly, they have a little biography. Each character has a little bio. So there's Jack's bio at the bottom. And this was the age of the Cabbage Patch Dolls, when things like adoption papers were in. Like a toy had to have a life history. You had to feel like you were adopting the toy. And that's kind of where these little biographies came from. That was the trend then, to give toys a backstory, as if they were children you were adopting. So let's hear the story of Jack O'Lantern. And it's spelled, the O'Lantern family, the O and the H is capitalized. It's the O-Lantern family. Like as if it were an exclamation. Oh, the O-Lantern family. It's capital O, capital H, Lantern. So Jack O'Lantern. Jack was born in 1942 in a North Dakota patch. He made his riches by selling bug repellent. He later moved west, where he met Jody. Southern California is where they settled and grew their family of 4 pumpkins. Let's see what they say about the family in general. The O'Lantern family. Tucked away in the far corner of the old field was a unique family of pumpkins, unique in that they were able to survive the harvest year after year, going unnoticed by the farmers. They would watch on as their friends and neighbors would pack up and leave. They had heard through the vine again and again about something called Halloween, and finally their curiosity got the best of them. They finally got tired of their patch, stemming their desire to leaf the field themselves and to discover Halloween. So I'm enunciating leaf because it's, instead of leave, it's spelled L-E-A-F. So there's little, and all these, everything written about the pumpkins has those little puns, little jokes like stemming, vine, and leaf. Todd Masters, sculptor and creator. Todd Masters was born in Seattle, Washington. He grew up with a unique fascination of monsters and weird-looking things. With enough curiosity prompting him to create, he began constructing such oddities in his mother's kitchen. To his parents' delight, at age 18, he moved out of his mother's kitchen onward to Hollywood to create weird things professionally. Today, Todd Masters has his own company and develops bizarre faces and weird things. Some of his credits involve work in Poltergeist, Predator, and Big Trouble in Little China. His latest creation is the O-Lantern family, created for your enjoyment during the Halloween season. And oddly, there's a lot of typos in that paragraph. I'm not even going to, there's several. It's kind of weird. There's no typos anywhere else. But just that one paragraph, there's like a half dozen typos. And the characters are Jesse, Jody, Jezebel, Joey, Jack, James, Johnny, Jock. So let's see if we can find Jody. I guess I will start putting these out here. There's Jody. All right. Here is Jody. So, there's Jody. Jody O-Lantern. She is married to Jack. They're married. And she doesn't look very happy about it. See, that's the thing about so many of these creatures, these O-Lantern family pumpkins. They have these really alarmed faces. They look like they've realized what they are. It's this look of existential horror, realizing that they are sentient pumpkins, realizing the horror of the reality of their existence. They're self-aware pumpkins. And you can see, like what I'm talking about, that the paint, the way it's applied there. Kind of uneven way that it's applied, which adds to the look of these things. Gives it a texture. You can see her stem. She looks like on the bottom. But I really like her expression. She's got that, just that look of horror. You know, almost like someone died and their ghost inhabited a pumpkin and materialized as a face, and then they realized what happened. If you're a fan of Twin Peaks, then there's a character that dies at one point, and her ghost or spirit, her soul, is trapped in a wooden knob on a drawer, like a knob that opens the drawer, and you see her face in the knob, like, you know, realizing that she's trapped in a knob on a drawer, for all eternity, I guess. And I don't know, unless the piece of furniture burns up or something. So it's kind of that weird surreal horror. Surreal is the word for all these. There's a surrealism to these weird things. So here's Jody's tag. So this is the one that was on here when I bought it. I took this tag off. Because at that point, I was just starting to collect. I had just enough awareness to know to save the tag, but not enough to know to leave it attached. So let's hear Jody's story. Jody O'Lantern. Jody was sprouted in 1949 in Southern California. She was not a terribly bright pumpkin, intelligence of an empty gourd. As a young pumpkin, Jody worked as a professional model for a marginal vegetable company. Critics said she was outstanding in her field. She later married Jack in 1960 and is now the proud mother of 4 healthy pumpkins. And it's interesting how the stories of these individual pumpkins, they don't quite match the official story of the O'Lantern family in general. They're not trying real hard to be consistent about the backstory of all these things. Let's see. Before I go any further, what else do I want to tell you about? Well, let's talk about the inspiration. So, Todd Masters, every time I say his name, I keep wanting to call him Todd McFarlane. I keep having to resist. I correct myself before I say his name. It's Todd Masters, not McFarlane. Todd Masters. But, I have to check myself every time I say his name. So Todd Masters says that the inspiration to make these things came from a Disney television special he saw in 1977. It was a Disney Halloween special called Disney's Halloween Hall o' Fame. Disney's Halloween Hall o' Fame. And it starred Jonathan Winters. And I think I might have seen this when it was broadcast. As a child, I think I might have seen this. Because I saw some clips. Well, I think the whole thing's on YouTube, but I didn't watch the whole thing. But I just wanted to see the part that inspired Todd Masters. And it was very familiar. So I saw this when I was a kid. I know I saw this. So there's a character. So Jonathan Winters plays multiple characters in this. He's I think a night watchman or something. And then he discovers this talking head. It's kind of like the head in the crystal ball in the Haunted Mansion. It's the same idea as that, basically, except instead of a fortune teller character, it's a living pumpkin. So it's Jonathan Winters with this, I guess, a foam prosthetic pumpkin head and his face. So they built this pumpkin around him, and then his face is sticking out of the pumpkin. It looks like it's part of the pumpkin, like he's a living pumpkin. And that is like the magical, all-seeing being, this pumpkin head, this living pumpkin, that guides Jonathan Winters through the story of this special. So he's playing the human, the night watchman, and he's also playing this pumpkin being. And I think it's in a crystal ball or something like that, sort of like the Haunted Mansion. If you've ever been through the Haunted Mansion, you know in the Haunted Mansion there's a crystal ball, and then there's a fortune teller type of a woman inside the crystal ball. Her face is in the crystal ball and it's talking. It's like that, only it's a pumpkin. So that living pumpkin that Jonathan Winters played in that special is what inspired Todd Masters 10 years later to create his own version of that idea with these living pumpkins, with these human faces. And I've always thought that these resemble the caricatures drawn by Leonardo da Vinci in his notebooks. If you just Google that, the caricatures that Leonardo da Vinci drew in his notebooks. They have these faces, these exaggerated faces, and I've always wondered if that was an inspiration to Todd Masters, because he's kind of remind me of that kind of style, those kinds of expressions. So that's what inspired Todd Masters. Let's look at another pumpkin here. So here's a tagged one. This is our first one that has a tag intact. So here is Johnny O'Lantern. That's Johnny. Here's Johnny. He's one of the more sinister looking ones. So Jock looks kind of placid, benign, kind of out to lunch. He's not quite sure what's up. Jack is grotesque. He's kind of sinister, kind of in agony. We're not sure. He's kind of angry. Jody is horrified. She's in terror. And Johnny here is sinister. He looks like he is up to no good. He looks demonic. He's a creepy one. And he kind of reminds me of the caricatures of Jimmy Carter from 1970, I guess 1976, during the election of 76. There were a lot of grinning novelty items to cash in on. See, Jimmy Carter back then, his big gimmick was that he grinned all the time and that he was a peanut farmer. So there were a lot of novelties that had peanuts, like, the nut, the peanut that you eat, peanuts, that had big grinning faces on them. And there was a lot of other, peanut or human face, there were a lot of other kinds of novelty items during that election year. They had this kind of grotesque, big, grinning face. And if you lived through that time, you know what I'm talking about. And this kind of reminds me of that. I don't know if there was some inspiration there or not. I mean, obviously that, because he was inspired, Todd Masters was inspired by that 1977 special. So that's his era, that late 70s era. That's his groove, I guess. So who knows? He might have had that in mind. But he's a cool little pumpkin. And I like how these are all different sizes. Some are short, some are tall, some are narrow, some are wide. I like that they're not all the same, because it makes them look, when you put them all together, they look more like pumpkins. So I hate to handle these tags. I don't want to accidentally, every time I handle one, I feel like it gets a little more torn or bent or something. So what's Johnny O'Lantern's story? Johnny is the youngest son of Jack and Jody. He was always the rebel of the family. On weekends, he would play in a punk rock band. The girls didn't like him because he played the field. When he's not in trouble or in school, he's at his part-time job at the local used car dealer selling lemons. So he's a used car salesman. Yeah, I can see that. There he is with his tag. So that's what they look like with the tag still attached. You can see how easy it is to tear that off. I mean, it's no wonder most of them don't have their tags these days. Let's see. Who are we going to look at next? I'll save him. There's another tagged one. There's, let's look at the tagged one as well. Okay, this is Jezebel. There's only 2 women in the adult set. So you haven't even gotten into, there's adults, there's babies. We haven't even gotten into that yet. So they have these little dents. I'm wondering if they're bunching up against each other and causing that. I don't know. See, whenever I look at my stuff, I always discover little alarming things that, what's going on there? Is it discoloring? Is it tearing? Is it coming apart? What's happening? This is Jezebel. So there's only 2 women in the adult pumpkin series, and we're going to find out there are babies and there are elderly pumpkins. So this is the standard original adult line, and these are the only 2 women in that line, Jody and Jezebel. And again, you can see Jezebel is that more orange color, more of an actual pumpkin color, really. And Jody's the reddish color. And I like them both, but I prefer the red. If I had to have them all one way or the other, I'd go for the red. But I like that they're different colors, because again, that makes them look like actual pumpkins when they're all together. So she's got an interesting expression. Look at that kind of smirk. She knows stuff. You can't put one over on her. There's her tag. Let's see what her story is. Jezebel O'Lantern. Jezebel is Jack's mother-in-law. She always seems to be sticking her stem into everybody's business. For 2 weeks out of the year, she lives in Miami, and the rest of the time she spends with her lovely daughter and her lazy, no-good son-in-law, Jack. She spends her day watching her favorite soap operas, The Young and the Squashless, and All My Gourds. So she is Jody's mom. She's the mother-in-law. Culturally, I don't know, is that still a trope? The mother-in-law, like that the mother-in-law is like the nemesis, the villain. It was in the 70s and 80s. And I don't know, I've kind of lost track with, human civilization. So I'm not sure if that's still a trope, that's still something in the culture, if that's kind of faded out. But here's her tag. And there she is. She looks like the old stereotype of a mother-in-law. That explains that smirky, kind of know-it-all face. And she's obviously more mature. And this is her daughter, Jody. I guess that's why Jody's alarmed, because her mom is always watching. So Jody's always scared, always worried about what mom is going to do. Huh. What else can we say before we see the next one here? There were a lot of knockoffs of the O'Lantern family pumpkin. So these were not some obscure little thing that only me and a couple other weirdos knew about. These were a hit. These were a big hit. These became a fad for a couple years. And according to an article, I think it was Time Magazine, actually, they sold 1 million pumpkins in the first 2 months of production. So in the first 2 months of these things, they sold 1 million pumpkins. I want to imitate Dr. Evil when I say that, but I won't. They sold 1 million pumpkins in the first 2 months. So they were a big hit. And there were a host of imitators, all kinds of imitators. For a few years, really for like a decade after these things were in stores, you still saw knockoff versions and things imitating them. There were other foam pumpkins that were knockoffs. They had human faces and different expressions. There were all kinds of manufacturers. I have a set of Topstone foam pumpkins that are knockoffs of these. They're a little smaller. I think Topstone also made bigger ones too, but the set I have is smaller. But there were all kinds of companies that did this. There were all kinds of ceramic pumpkins that had faces like these. Most of them were original sculpts that were just copying the style of the O'Lantern family. But there were some that actually knocked off the actual sculpts and recast the actual pumpkins and made knockoffs of them, in like ceramic knockoffs. There were all kinds of novelties. You name it, they made it. All kinds of stuff. So besides the actual Todd Masters Pumpkin Productions O'Lantern family products, there were all kinds of knockoffs. There were many, many, many more knockoffs than there were official pumpkins, by far. And even after the official pumpkins were no longer in production, you kept seeing knockoffs. They kept coming up again and again and again. That style of the human-faced pumpkin with the vivid expression, that lasted into the 1990s. You kept seeing things that were copying these. So it was a fad that it had far-reaching influence way beyond the original product. So let's look at another pumpkin. Okay. This is James O'Lantern. He almost looks like Kirk Douglas, kind of reminds me of Kirk Douglas. He's got a square or rectangular shape. I'm wondering if these were based on any specific people, or if these expressions just came out of Todd Masters' imagination. He is weird. Look at that guy. All these are so strange. And they seem like they would come to life in your hands. They're almost like little damned souls living in these little foam pumpkins. And that looks like it was probably sculpted on a real pumpkin. Especially since when you look at it from the side, you can kind of see where the actual pumpkin ended and the face was sculpted onto it. Nice smirking face. That's James O'Lantern. I don't know, because I don't have his card, I don't know what his family relation is to the rest of them. Put you over here. Let's see here. Is this Jody? Joey. I'm looking for Joey. Is that Joey? There's Joey. Yeah. I need to be careful because I can see some of these are getting a little flattened areas because they're in this box. They're all touching each other, and where they're touching, it's kind of giving them little flat spots. Hopefully, I don't know how else to store them. They take up a lot of space. Here's Joey O'Lantern, and I believe he is the son of Jody and Jack. And I could have sworn I had a tagged Joey, but I can't find him now. I think there might be a box somewhere with more pumpkins that I've misplaced, because I could have sworn I had a tagged Joey. And he's that lighter orange color. So this is one of the ones I bought as a kid, as a teenager. He's one of the 3 that I bought originally. I love his face. He kind of reminds me of Rob Bottin's work on The Thing. That grimace. It's almost like you can almost imagine it being a piece of The Thing with a face on it like that, like the 2 faces that are connected. It almost looks like some kind of manifestation of The Thing. he's obviously not happy. I don't know what he's so unhappy about. But he's got quite a grimace. Looks like he's angry. So there's Joey O'Lantern. Which one is this? This is another Jezebel. Another Jezebel. Two mothers-in-law. Mother-in-laws or mothers-in-law? What would be the plural of that? Two mother-in-laws, mothers-in-law. I'm not sure. So she can bother her son-in-law, Jack. Be behind him. Oh. So this is a tagged Jody. And her nose is getting quite flat. Oh, I don't know, I hope that pops back out. So she has a tag. And let's see, what's the, it looks like a clearance sticker. What store was this at? Reduced price. Wow, she was down to $1.99. That is cheap. That is a blowout price. But I can't read the name of the store because the red clearance sticker is covering it up. So there's Jody with a tag. Put her back here. Let's see here. What's this? Okay, this must be Jesse. Yeah, that's Jesse. Double check here. Yeah. So this is Jesse O'Lantern. He is another creepy looking one. He looks like he's insane. He looks like he's from the madhouse. He is one of the more malevolent looking members of the O'Lantern family. Yeah, he's a creepy one. We got one more. Oh, a tagged one. Oh, this is Johnny. Now, did I already have Johnny's? So I've got two tagged Johnnies. Well, anyway, here's another Johnny, and he's also got his tag. So I have two Johnny O'Lanterns with tags. Here's the other one. You can see one's reddish orange, and one's the lighter orange. And the lighter orange, the tag's really faded. And the other one, the tag is not faded. So here's the old lantern family. They are some crazy, crazy, weird, bizarre toys, if you want to call them toys. They're really novelty items. They're not really toys. They're decorative novelty items, but they might as well be toys. I mean, you could certainly let a kid play with them if you wanted. I don't know how long they'd last, being made of foam. So, these are the adults. They also made a series of baby pumpkins. Baby pumpkins. And the babies were named Jamie, Jack Jr., Jason, Jennifer, Jimmy, Julie, Josh, and Judy. Jamie, Jason, Jimmy, Josh, Jack Jr., Jennifer, Julie, Judy. So let's see if we can find some of those. I don't have a big collection of the babies, unfortunately. We have a few. I have 3 to be exact. I have Jack Jr., Jennifer, and Julie. So this is Jack Jr. I hope I can focus on him. What am I going to do? Let's see here. Put you over here. Okay. There. So this is Jack Jr. And like his father, he's kind of angry. He's got a lot on his mind. He's got something to say. But I can see the focus is kind of going in and out. You can see how big these are. They're small, these little babies. And they're softer. They have like a softer texture, like a baby. So hopefully, I can see the focus kind of fluctuating. So hopefully you're able to see that. And it's not too fuzzy. And so this is Julie, I believe. This is Julie. Julie O'Lantern. She's one of the babies. She has a more benign expression. And this one is Jennifer. And she's kind of mischievous, I guess. Has a sort of, I don't know, smug, kind of self-satisfied look. She does look like she's up to something. She's up to something. But it's not really sinister exactly. It's not angry. That's Jennifer. So, in addition to the babies and the adults, they also made 2 grandparents. So the grandparents were like this big. They were as big as all these put together. They're huge. And they looked really like overgrown and old pumpkins. They were like parts of them were kind of hanging down. They were kind of flattened, like a real pumpkin. If you've seen like at a state fair or something where they have their champion pumpkins, they never look round and perfect. They're always these blobby looking monstrosities. That's what the grandparents look like. There was two grandparents. They're really huge and kind of flattened and like expanding outward and lumpy looking. And thanks to Paul, we have some photos of the grandparents. He has a pair of O'Lantern family grandparents. These are extremely rare. They only made 30 of them, 30 grandparents. They were made for a charity auction. So they weren't in stores. They were for this. They were made for this charity benefit, and I guess they auctioned off the pumpkins, and the money went to charity. I suppose that's how it worked. But there was only 30 of them, and Paul has one of the only pairs of grandparents that anybody knows about. I mean, with 30 made, I'm assuming there's more out there somewhere. So there's a O'Lantern Family Facebook group that Todd Masters runs, and Paul has posted photos of his grandparents there, and no one else has ever posted photos of the grandparents in that group. So I think if anyone else had them, they would have posted pictures of them by now. So however many there are out there can't be very many. Only 30 made originally, and that was a long time ago. Paul says they have a rubber outer skin. So they're foam filled, but their outer skin is rubber. So they're not completely all foam like this. There's a rubber outer skin for the grandparents to make them more durable. So I'd love to have a pair of grandparents. I think it would cost a lot of money. And I can't imagine spending that kind of money. But it would be nice. I think maybe I ought to worry more about getting all the babies first, or getting all of them tagged or something like that. Take on that challenge before I go for the grandparents. So, out of the original foam series, that's the set. These characters, the adults, then the babies that I mentioned, there's 8 babies. So 8 adults, 8 babies, 2 grandparents, 2 giant grandparents. The babies and the adults were mass produced. Like I said, there was a million adults in the first 2 months of production. I don't know about after that. I don't know about the second year, but there are tons made. Babies, I'm sure they made a lot of babies too. But there were only 30 grandparents. So those were only made for a charity auction. Now, there were other things made, and I think we need to clear some of these off. There were other things besides these that are part of the O'Lantern family collection. I'm not going to wrap them all up. I obviously need a bigger box. It sounds like Jaws. I need a bigger box to put these in because they're too compacted. They're pushing against each other and getting little flat spots, and I don't want that. I don't want them getting flattened out. Okay, so they made some other things. These are all official Pumpkin Productions products. They made a set of finger puppets. A set of finger puppets. This is not the whole set. I don't own a complete set. I have a lot of doubles and triples. So these are finger puppets. Here's Jezebel. So that's Jezebel. And you can see she has a hole for the finger. And that's how it would go. Sometimes people call these pencil toppers, but the hole's too big for a pencil. Maybe a magic marker or something, but not a pencil. They're finger puppets. That's Jezebel. Now I have I have two Jessies. There's Jessie. I have two Jessies. I have one Johnny. He's cute. I like him. One Johnny. I have three jocks. Three little jack-o'-lanterns. Let's see. He looks pretty good. There's a little jock. Compare him to the full-size jock. See, for comparison, that's how big they are. There's jock. There's two more jocks. And they're all the same. Just for whatever reason, I've got three of them. So I don't have Jack or Jody or Joey. There's several I'm missing. These are cute. So I definitely would like to get the rest of the finger puppets. Let's see. How many do I need? I guess 4. So I need Jack, Jody, Joey, and James. James is the one I'm missing. So I have Jack, Jody, Joey, James. Half the set I'm missing to have all the finger puppets. Yeah, I'd like to get all the finger puppets. That's doable. I should have all those. Let's see here. Let's put these back. Okay. Let's put these over here. They can be in the background. Okay, so what else we have? We have candles. These are official Lantern family candles. These were licensed. Let's see here. The Lantern Candle family. That's what they're called. The Lantern Candle family. Northern Lights Candles. Copyright Todd Masters, made in China. Has a phone number and everything. So that's what it looks like on the bottom, at least that one. This is Jack-o'-lantern. It's a wax candle jack-o'-lantern. Let's see. I don't have all 8 characters and candles. Oh, it's Joey. Here's a sticker. Here's Joey. He's in just as bad a mood as the foam one. What else we got here? This is Jezebel. I think I have more than one Jezebel. I think I have 2 Jezebels. Here's the Jezebel candle. This is Jock. I can tell just from the shape that is Jock, because Jock has that pear shape. Oh, he's cute. Here's Jock. I like that Jock is kind of sleepy looking. He might be the most benign of all of the adult adult jack-o', gosh, what am I saying? Jack-o'-lantern is the most benign looking of the adult foam O-lantern family pumpkins. There we go, I got it out. He has that kind of peaceful, placid, sleepy, kind of stoned face. He's not grimacing, he's not in pain, he's not angry, he's not in horror. He's just kind of hanging out. Let's see what this is. Oh, it's another Jezebel. She's got some flattening on her lips. Another Jezebel. Oh, this is James. James O-lantern. He's got that same smirky face as the big one. And I don't know if these were resculpted from scratch to make these candles, or if there was some kind of a process. People used to talk about something called pantographing. I don't know how that works. But back in pre-digital days, they were able to reduce the size or enlarge something through pantographing. And I don't know if that might be what they use for these, or if they just resculpted them. I can't tell if they are the very same sculpt, just shrunk. I think they're resculpted. That's what it seems to me, that this is just a very good resculpt in a smaller format, a smaller scale. Well, that's it. So I don't have all of them. What am I missing here? So I'm missing 3. I'm missing Jesse, Johnny, and Jody. Jesse, Johnny, Jody. So there's 3 I'm missing. And again, that should be doable. I should be able to get those 3 one of these days. They're rare, but they're not that rare. Same with the finger puppets. They're rare, but they're not that rare. You can get them. Especially around Halloween. That's when they usually end up on eBay. The really rare ones, of course, are the grandparents. Those are impossible to get. There's also a set of pins. I don't mean like pins that you write. I mean pins that you wear. Where should I put this? Put it in there. Pens or pendants. They're made of resin, and they use the same sculpts as the finger puppets. So they took those sculpts, and I guess they must have used just the front half where the face is, and put, I guess, like a pen in the back, I'm assuming, and cast them in resin, orange resin, so you can wear O-lantern faces. I don't have any of those. There was one on eBay that was just, I had to buy it now, that was just, forget it, crazy price. I don't know when they come up in a actual auction how much they go for, probably much less than that. I don't need those. I want all the finger puppets and all the candles, and it would be nice to have more tagged examples of the adults. And I think that would satisfy me if I had all the finger puppets, all the candles, complete characters sets, and a few more tagged adults. It would be nice to have all the babies I'd like a few more, I guess. The thing about the babies is they're not these characters. I like the 8 adult Old Lantern characters. Those are like the classic, iconic Old Lantern family characters. The babies are different characters. They're not Jack and Jody and Joey and Jesse. They're not those characters. So it would be nice to have a few more babies. It's not going to be the end of the world if I don't have a complete set of the babies. You know, I might one day, but it's not a big deal. I thought I had a tagged baby. If there's a box somewhere in this basement that has a tagged Joey and a tagged baby and a couple other ones, I think somewhere around here, hidden away, I'll find it one of these days. There's a box with a tagged baby and a tagged Joey. Probably because they had tags, I put them in some special box where they'd be protected and forgot where it was. Maybe one day, if I ever move and I'm taking all the boxes, I'll say, "What's this box? Look what's in there." So that's all of the original Old Lantern family products. Oh no, there was a makeup kit. Pumpkinify Yourself. Pumpkinify Yourself. And it's a makeup kit to make yourself look like a pumpkin. And I don't know if I've ever actually seen that or what it looks like. I don't think it has foam appliances like the Imagineering kits, like the face from Imagineering. It might, I don't know. I think it's just makeup, but I don't really know. I've never seen it. I think I might have seen like a catalog photo or something like that, but that's it. So, Pumpkin Productions went out of business in 1989, and apparently it didn't go out of business cleanly. There was a lot of strife. It didn't go quietly into its good night. And in his Facebook group, Todd Masters, he talks vaguely about lawsuits and losing control of the pumpkins, losing the rights to the pumpkins, and having to go to court and fight to get his pumpkins back. And somehow Hillary Clinton was involved, and I think her involvement was as an attorney. Hillary Clinton, I think, was involved as an attorney. She wasn't stealing Todd's pumpkins or anything like that. I think she was an attorney. I don't know if she was representing Pumpkin Productions or Todd or other people, or I'm not sure who she was representing, but she's in the mix. But Todd Masters has not elaborated on that. But in his group and other things on the web, he's in interviews and things that I've read, he's alluded to legal trouble. And somehow Hillary Clinton is involved, but he hasn't gone into details. But that's part of. I was going to say I was part of why it went out of business in '89. I think there was something like that in '89, but there was also something more recent than that, some more recent issues too. So there we go, I almost called him McFarlane. Todd Masters, he's not a very communicative person. He has his Facebook group and other presence online, and he has, I guess, an Instagram. And I hear that I haven't really had a lot of involvement with the Instagram, but I hear he's more talkative there. But he doesn't really, he doesn't get on there every day and talk in detail about these things. And over the years on the Facebook group, I've asked a few questions, and I haven't really gotten straight answers, or I've got no answer at all. So, from what I understand, he's not he's not known for being very communicative. So that's why I didn't send him a bunch of questions asking about this stuff because, it's my personal experience and what I've heard from others. He's not going to be real forthcoming talking about this stuff. I think maybe in a formal interview where he was sat down, mic'd up, and recorded on video in a more formal, structured setting, I think you could ask him a bunch of detailed questions about the history of the company and get more information that way. But just going on Facebook and trying to ask stuff, my experience, personal experience has been that hasn't worked. Pumpkin Productions was actually three main, I'm sure there were other people involved, but there's three main movers and shakers. Obviously Todd Masters, but there was also Jack Erker and Bob Williams. Jack Erker and Bob Williams. And apparently Jack Erker lives in the St. Louis area, which is close to where I am. So I wonder if he was someone I could seek out, and maybe I could interview him at some point, maybe next Halloween. And maybe he would have things to say about the history of the company. I don't know. I don't know if Todd Masters is on good terms with these two or what that situation is. It'd be interesting to get them all three together for an interview, like an in-depth interview about Old Lantern family. That would be great to do, like a formal, or it could be like Zoom. It could be on Zoom and do a formal interview about the history of the company and ask many detailed, serious questions to get on the record about the whole saga of how these came about, what happened, why did the company go out of business, what happened over the years. So the next chapter in the Pumpkins was in 2015. So they had been building a cult following. And I'm obviously part of that cult following. And in 2015, Todd Masters made a big push to give the Pumpkins, the Old Lantern family, a comeback. And he had big plans that he posted on his Facebook group. They were going to be available again with new versions of the original characters, plus new characters. And there was going to be a Halloween special, like a film, a motion picture, a Halloween special. And it was going to be directed by the Soska sisters, Jen and Sylvia Soska. Jen and Sylvia Soska were going to direct this Halloween special. And it wasn't just him saying this. They did interviews. The Soska sisters did interviews about this and did promotional photos with the two of them sitting there with holding up pumpkins. And if you don't know who they are, they're sisters, obviously. But they produce and direct horror movies, indie horror movies. They did a well-regarded film called American Mary. And they did recently a remake of David Cronenberg's Rabid. And they've had a TV show. They've done a lot of different things. So they've had a career in the indie horror film scene, and their personalities. They've made themselves into media personalities. They do a lot of media. They're very well known in certain circles. So if you're a horror fan, you probably know who they are. So getting them to direct an Old Lantern family special was kind of a big deal. It was kind of a coup to get them on board because they were kind of trending at the time. And this was going to be, I think part of it was going to be stop motion, whether it was going to be real stop motion or simulated stop motion, I don't know. But there was going to be characters that had like pumpkin heads, but then had bodies with arms and legs. So I don't know if we would, to what extent we were going to see the Old Lantern family as they were presented as these novelties with just a pumpkin with a face. How much of the special would have those in it, and how much would be these walking pumpkins with like a pumpkin head and then arms and legs with bodies attached. And And I don't know if it would be like live action, like, actual humans in this, or if it would be all stop motion. But that was the idea. And they released some images from, I don't know, like pre-production kind of images of what they were going for. And they had a crowdfunding campaign. And part of that crowdfunding campaign included new versions of 3 original Lantern Family pumpkins: Jack, Jody, and Jesse. So Todd Masters, his workshop, sculpted new versions of Jack, Jody, and Jesse. They were the same characters. At first glance, they looked the same, but they were new sculpts. They were more detailed, more modern-looking sculpts. And he made some quantity of foam editions of those 3 characters. And those were premiums for this crowdfunding campaign. But the biggest thing he did for the crowdfunding campaign was he introduced a brand new Lantern Family character. It was called Trumpkin. Trumpkin. Remember, this is 2015. This was the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. Donald Trump had started campaigning, and he'd been for years during the Obama administration. He'd been doing the birther thing and getting in the news all the time. So he was already had shifted from like TV personality to political personality. And this Trumpkin was like a political parody novelty of Donald Trump. And he made a big one and a little one, 2 sizes. And they were premiums in this crowdfunding campaign, from my understanding. I don't know how many he made, but he made a quantity because he had photos, or he had video of making the Trumpkins, and it showed them producing a quantity of these Trumpkins. And Paul has some Trumpkins. I think he's got both the green, came with a green stem and a blonde stem, and the stem kind of curls around like Donald Trump's hair. The Trumpkin, unlike the reissue versions that they made of the other 3 characters, the Trumpkin was sculpted by Todd Masters himself. The other 3 apparently were not. They were sculpted by people in his workshop, but he personally sculpted the Trumpkin, the big and small Trumpkin. So it kind of gives them a pedigree. I don't think the Lantern Family collection is incomplete without the Trumpkin, but I wouldn't mind having, I wouldn't say no to a Trumpkin. Like I said, the subject matter bothers me, but it is a parody of Donald Trump. It is a political parody. Still, it is kind of odd to go political with the Lantern Family. But Trumpkin rhymes with pumpkin. So I think it was all about just that. It rhymed with pumpkin. And as we'll see with another episode of Basement Horror, there are other monster stuff that's political and gets into political parody, political satire. We're going to see very soon something else of a political nature that's also like a satire, a political satire piece or series of monster toys. So thanks to Paul for providing photos of those. I don't know what happened with the Soska Halloween special, but it didn't happen. It was never produced. I don't know what happened with the crowdfunding. I remember asking some questions about it at the time. I didn't get any answers. Didn't happen. It just didn't work out. Something didn't happen. Funding didn't come together, or something else went wrong, or some of these issues with the rights to who owned the characters came up, or what exactly the deal was. But something happened, and this TV special never got made. The resurgence of the pumpkins as a new products, that never happened. The big comeback never happened. There was a lot of build-up that year trying to drum up publicity about the pumpkins, this big comeback of the Lantern Family, and it didn't happen. there was a little trickle of these new products. There's 3 re-sculpted original characters and the big and small Trumpkins. Those trickled out, I guess, just, people who contributed to the crowdfunding at a certain level. So those are out there, a few of them. But then that's it. I don't know. There's certainly a demand for these. There's a big audience. If he were to make a new set of 8 characters, they'd sell. I don't know what kind of volume they'd sell. He's not going to sell 1 million of them like he did in 1987. But as a boutique kind of a thing for collectors, I think they'd sell. If he made like 100, well, I was going to say if he made 100 sets, that might be ambitious. Let's say if he made 50 sets, I think they'd sell. Maybe not overnight, but I think they'd sell. And of course, if we got that Halloween special made to promote it, then I could see them perhaps having a wider market, maybe actually being in stores. I mean, there's still Hallmark stores. You put them out in Hallmark again. I could see that if there was a TV special. So maybe one day the O'Lantern family will come back. I don't know. It was tried in 2015. Didn't work for whatever reason. Didn't happen. Maybe it'll happen someday. These are, like I said, important to me as a collector. They are really what got me into collecting in the first place. What set me on a path to becoming a toy collector. I mean, where is he? Oh, come out of here. Here we go. My original Jack O'Lantern. The very first one I bought that day at Hallmark in the Mark Twain Shopping Center in fall of 1987. Really, the very first thing I ever collected is this item right here, this very same one. My first moments as a collector, it's all wrapped up in this thing right here. The very first thing I actually collected was this. This guy, this very one. The birth of my toy collecting hobby is right here in my hands. This thing. Here I am, all these years later, still collecting. Okay. I hope you got something out of that. The O'Lantern family pumpkins. Very unique, very influential, trend-setting, copied 100 times by all kinds of different knockoff manufacturers. And also, one thing you gotta understand is, back in the 80s, having something like this was like owning a movie prop. Because there just weren't things like this. This was like owning a piece of Hollywood. This was like, you know how like in the 60s, Don Post Studios would talk about how their masks were from Hollywood. They would always emphasize that Hollywood angle. Like when you had a Don Post mask, you had something the same quality as a Hollywood movie. Well, that was kind of in the air in the 1980s, like the Imagineering, the face makeup kits with those foam appliances. That was like a Hollywood thing that you could have in your home. You could get your hands on something movie quality, or even something like the Boglins. Those rubber puppets were like something out of a special effect from a movie. Or the Telco Motionettes. Those were animatronics. You know, for a normal person to own animatronics was a big deal. So that was an era of all these things that were sort of always in the hands of the professionals in the entertainment industry, being kind of democratized and coming into the hands of the consumers. The average person could have foam makeup appliances in props that look like something from a movie, sculpted by an actual Hollywood makeup artist, animatronic monster robots, and rubber puppets like something that you might use in a movie that look like they came out of a movie. So that was the trend in the 80s, in late 70s into the 80s, to kind of put that Hollywood effects, practical effects quality into your hands, into your home. And these were part of that. That's part of what made them special, that they didn't look like toys. They looked like something that came out of a movie. And they were actually made by a Hollywood movie effects artist from his own hands to you, to your house. So that's part of why they're special, why they were special then and special now. Well, I hope you have a happy and safe Halloween. Remember the big giveaway. I think by the time this is uploaded, the deadline probably will have passed for the big Halloween giveaway. But remember to watch it. Saturday night, Halloween night, I will upload the drawing for the Dawn Post Tor Johnson mask and the NECA Halloween 3 action figure set. Whoever wins will have their choice of the Tor Johnson mask or the Halloween 3 action figure set. So be watching for that drawing Halloween night, Saturday night. I don't know what else to tell you except happy Halloween. Thank you very much. Remember, the one who dies with the most toys is dead.